This episode of Reality Escape Pod is brought to you by Weldwood Marketing, Buzzshot, Cogs by Clockwork Dog, and Patreon supporters like you.
Cogs by Clockwork Dog is an easy-to-use software-hardware platform for running interactive events, including escape rooms, haunts, and other immersive experiences. Their plug-and-play hardware seamlessly integrates with their software, so you can create a game with any type of puzzle logic, lighting, and sound cues without having to write a single line of code.
While primarily recognized for its use in escape rooms, Cogs also serves as a powerful show control system used in high-end interactive experiences, including immersive theater productions, haunted attractions, mini golf courses, and experiential marketing events.
I mean, we're talking like large-scale productions here, right?
Punch Drunk is using it for Viola's Room, Phantom Peak uses Cogs, Monopoly Life Size runs on Cogs, Bridge Command, which is a big tech setup, Cogs again, Taskmaster Live, Cogs all the way down.
I'll be honest, I was really surprised when I heard that something like Phantom Peak is running on Cogs, because Phantom Peak is massive. It's practically a theme park. And to know that it's all running off of Cogs, that's crazy.
It's a great, stable system, and it's easy to build wonderful things with it. That's why people use it.
Get the Cogs starter set for only $130 with free shipping to the USA. This bundle is normally valued at $257. You can learn more and purchase your starter set at cogs.show. Use code REPOD at checkout. That's REPOD. Make sure to follow them on Instagram or Facebook at Cogs App for the latest news. Link and details in the show notes.
Welcome to the Reality Escape Pod, your lifeline when you need a getaway from the real world. I'm David Spira, alongside my co-host, PG Law. Together, we're exploring immersive gaming from all angles, and we'll be joined by guests who really know their stuff. Except for this episode, because it's episode 100.
Woohoo! What do you mean, except for this episode? In particular, this episode, David, we're the guests who really know their stuff.
I'm just going to sit here trying to be modest.
That's okay. That's what you have me for.
No, we have no guest today. We are just taking a little bit of time to celebrate what this show has been. And we have a very particular way that we're going to go about doing that today.
Yeah, we were trying to think of ideas of how to celebrate our 100th episode. And, you know, David says to me, I don't know if this is too much work, but
it was a lot of work.
He's like, let's look back and think about trying to capture some moments, things that guests have said that really made an impact on us and how we view immersive design.
Or just life and business or whatever it is.
And it was funny because he says, you know, it may be a lot of work going through and trying to find the right clips. And I was like, no, we're doing this because off the top of my head, I already knew 10 different quotes that live rent-free in my head. And I think about these things that some of our guests have said all the time.
And so what we have chosen to do here is each one of us has found 5 clips, and we're going to play them for the other. And then we're going to talk a little bit about them. I can't speak for PG. I can't claim that these are inherently like the best moments of Reality Escape Pod. I don't even know how to define that. But what I can say is that for me, the ones that I have chosen are quotes that when a guest said them at the time, they really hit hard for me. Most of them are things that I needed to hear at the moment that they were said.
And I think for me, well, first of all, my criteria was a good soundbite. Something said really succinctly, and that's how you create those earworms that I go back to like a certain sentence. But it was something that kind of illustrated the point in a way that made me look at that perspective with fresh eyes. And these are also things that I found myself going back to when I started designing and creating some puzzles for PG's Playhouse or creating experiences for things like Neotropolis. And these were lessons that have shaped how I approach design work.
So without further ado, the first one that I want to play is kind of poetic, I think, because it is from season 1, episode 1, when we had Elan Lee of Exploding Kittens on as our very first guest. A thing that at the time I did not realize until I was preparing for that episode and he had already agreed to come on, just how incredibly impressive and cool he was. I did not realize how aggressively we overshot when we invited him on. He was just my friend Elan who makes this cool game. But this quote, which was 3 minutes into the very first episode, has, I think, changed a lot of the course of the last half decade for me. Legendary game designer Jordan Weissman is creator of some of my favorite games, but has also been your mentor for many years. What's the most valuable correction that he has ever suggested to a game that you've designed or your approach to creating games?
Wow, that's another good one. All right, 2 for 2 here. Okay, so Jordan Weissman is the smartest person I know. He's been my mentor since I met him. He was the creative director at the Xbox at Microsoft, and they hired me to help launch the very first Xbox, and they hired me as a producer. So my job at first was just make sure the trains are all running on time. Check in with the studios, make sure that all the documents were where they needed to be, the shared drives were all set, all the very procedural elements of a game. After working with me for a few months, Jordan pulled me aside and he said 2 important things. He said, 1, you're a horrible producer. But then he followed it up with number 2, which was, but you're an incredible game designer and we're going to switch your roles. Because what he had noticed is I just couldn't help myself but touch up the game design docs that I was managing and say, hey, but what if we tried this and what if we do this and this other thing? And it was really randomizing the teams, but he still loved the ideas. And so he switched me over to game design. He actually made me a lead game designer for the very first Xbox, which was very exciting for me. And I think I'll tell you the best advice he ever gave me was when you're working with giant teams and there's not enough time and the deadline is the most terrifying thing because you have to finish. And so you're forced to delegate. And delegation is really hard when you have a vision in your head, you understand how you want a thing to operate. The other people you work with inevitably don't do the thing that you would have done if you had time to do everything yourself. That's the nature of delegation. And it used to drive me insane. And I used to tear people's work apart and redo it over and over again, so much so that I eventually installed a bed in my office because I realized I'm just never going home. I'm just going to stay here and do everybody's work. And he pulled me aside and he said a very important line. He said, other people's work is not worse. It's just other people's work. And it took me probably a year, maybe 2 years to really understand what that meant and be able to find the beauty in other people's work and acknowledge that I have to get away from this notion that my version is the best version. My version is just my version, and I like it because it's my version. That doesn't mean it's the best. I work with such incredible, talented, smart people that I need to look at their work as other people's work that is potentially better than anything I could produce on my own. And that's really kind of stuck with me all these years. It's really changed the way I think about game design.
PG, that other people's work is just other people's work line hit me at a time I really needed it. I want to take everyone back to 2021 when I was editing this. There are a couple of things that you should know because I don't think that it would be possible to understand what this meant to me at the time. First thing is that I was intensely sick. I'm better now, but for most of the 100 episodes that we made, I was very ill. I was in a lot of pain all the time, and I was drowning out that pain by working on Room Escape Artist stuff. And this was the second episode that I was editing because there was an episode 0. It was just the 2 of us, but it was the first time that I was editing with a guest. Adding a third person into the mix, it was a lot of work. I did not know what I was doing. I had never edited audio until the episode before, and I was really just feeling my way through this blindly. It took me, for every single episode of season 1, about 30 to 40 hours per episode to edit.
Oh my God, David. But also back then, we weren't utilizing the tools.
No, we're not using any of the same tools or methods that we were using. But I tell you the amount of time it was taking me to edit because I cannot tell you how many times I listened to this passage over and over and over and over again. Every single thing about every single episode in season 1, I listened to so many times. And at that time, Room Escape Artist had been growing in a lot of interesting ways. Reality Escape Convention had become a thing and was becoming increasingly complicated to lead. The hive mind was in full swing, and we had a lot more writers than we had ever had before. The podcast was now a thing, and I had this collaborator that I was working with in the form of you that I had just never had this working relationship before. And I was somebody who, throughout school, was very bad at doing group work. I was somebody who would just do the whole group project myself because I didn't trust other people to carry their weight. And if they did carry their weight, I didn't trust the quality that they were going to produce. And so I had to rethink how I was going to collaborate with people in order to make things like Recon and REPOD and what Room Escape Artist had become work. I was collaborating very successfully with Lisa, had total trust in her. But beyond that, it was a lot more difficult for me. And Elan really helped me by passing on Jordan Weissman's words of wisdom.
You know, it's funny because I remember you had said that to me before. So this is not news that this is something that's really resonated with you. Other people's work is just other people's work. And when you had told me that at the time, I was like, what is he talking about? It didn't make any sense to me at all. And I think it's because for a lot of my career, and even in a lot of other parts of my life, I've had a tendency to lone wolf it. I run a family business, but really I'm doing a lot of it on my own. Even on Survivor, I was famous for Underdog. I was part of an alliance, but for a lot of it,
You were mostly a lone wolf there.
yeah, I was just going it alone. I don't know if maybe it's trust issues with trusting other people or not really knowing how to work with other people or valuing it. For a long time, I probably didn't value working with other people, as sad as that is to say. And I will say that working on the podcast with you, working with Room Escape Artists has been one of the greatest joys of my life. And part of that is what draws me to escape rooms. It's that feeling of collaboration and teamwork. And it is a magical feeling. But again, when you're not in that leadership role and you're one of the cogs or whatever, it's okay because you're the person that the work is being delegated to. So you're just doing your work. And it really wasn't until probably this year that I was working on Neotropolis. I was kind of in a leadership position and I had to entrust a lot of parts of things to other people to execute my vision for how I wanted an experience to run, from people that were decorating the set, from the actors that were playing the part and the roles, and the handlers and all of it. I wrote the documentation, but ultimately I just handed it off and just let it fly. And at that point, David, I thought about these words. During the last 2 weeks when I was running that experience, those words ran through my head a lot. Other people's work is just other people's work. And that's really what allowed me to let it go. I would ask myself, do you trust these people? Well, yes, every single person was talented and accomplished. And so just let the baby fly, let it free.
Yeah, collaboration comes for you at some point.
And it's a wonderful feeling. It was incredible. I'm so grateful that I did. And these people came together and made my vision better than what it was originally in my head.
So what quote did you bring?
So this quote, again, it's from early on. In fact, it's a two-part. I cheated my part a little bit. I snuck in two short little clips that I couldn't decide, and they came together in a way that I think works synergistically. And this kind of goes back to really opening my eyes to the different elements that it takes to make an immersive experience come alive. So this first clip is from Season 1, Episode 4, our good friends Anne and Chris Lukeman from CU Adventures.
Chris has a really, really strong passion for production design, and that has been something that he's always done with our films. And that is something that he brings to the escape room. He's building the same kind of stuff. It's just building it beefier and stronger.
Talking about like set design, right?
I've always really, really looked at the physical props, the set, the production design as storytelling. I've always been big on making sure that even if the scene is a dry dialogue that will be shot in close-up so that framing looks good, that helps further part of the story. Taking that further to a physical space has just been amazing. Thinking about it where If a player stands in the doorway, here's kind of how they're interpreting the scene. If a player decides to go back in this corner and look at the scene from there, what are they seeing? If I can stand anywhere in the room, it should feel like a picturesque, lived-in space and either tell part of the story, inform part of the puzzles, or be weird or be funny. It has to do one of those things. And exploring our spaces as we're in production of rooms, that's just kind of the process. Whenever we hit a lull or at the end of a long night or when we're in between resets for other games, I'll just pace around in the rooms in construction and just be like, what does this need? Is this something? And every single piece of the process should be something, either artistically interesting, puzzle-oriented, or a neat experience that maybe 1 in 20 people will look back on and smile about.
This next clip is from Season 5, Episode 2, Linda Klein of Farm to Spaceship.
That was the other thing that you were touching on that I had a really strong positive reaction to, which is my background is in UX design. I've been doing this for a long while, and everywhere I go, I kind of find myself asking the question, what's the experience that I'm having here? Is this deliberate? Is it not? And I think more often than not, when I'm walking into stores and brick and mortar businesses, the answer is that the experience that is being presented is haphazard. It's not one of choice. It's not one where someone looked at this and said, the signage is a canvas. The front door is a canvas. My windows are a canvas. The interior is a canvas. The things that we're offering and the way that we're stocking it are also a canvas. It's, why I do most of my shopping online is almost every time I walk into a store, I can't find anything that fits me. That's a canvas, and it's forcing me to make decisions as a customer.
We use some language around that. We call them experience dials or sliders. Imagine like a soundboard that's got like a mixer, an equalizer. It's got all these sliders on it. And if you label each of those sliders with different experience design elements, you can learn to slide those up and slide those down to get the perfect mix that you're looking for. And I think one of the things that maybe you're speaking to provide some language around is sort of the humanizing of the experience as the experiencer. Does it matter that I'm there? Where do I get to choose? Or how do I affect the outcome? And you think maybe a small market as opposed to a big grocery store. Well, someone behind the counter could easily know your name, right? And that really changes the experience, even though they might not have something in your size or have what you want. That's dialing up the personal part of the experience.
Yeah. So when we talked to Anne and Chris Lukeman, they were really speaking towards the storytelling aspects of the set. And that one quote from Chris, I think about all the time. Everywhere I look in my escape room, I want it to be part of a puzzle or telling a story or be something weird or be something that made you laugh. And that just resonated with me in such a way. The economy of the set. Yes, everything should have a purpose, right? It was the first time I really thought about how different parts of the set serve different purposes and splitting them up into those different purposes, but also thinking about the economy of set design and where to draw the eye. He was talking about sight lines. Like if you're standing in a corner, where is this player going to be looking? So that quote, I really think about a lot when I'm in an escape room and I'm looking around at different things and seeing where that's been applied. And so that really kind of started me on thinking about the design elements.
For me, it's funny because I loved that quote when he said it, because I think he was articulating something that I found really important to say. It didn't hit me the way that it hit you because I think I had gone through my own process of becoming a designer and learning some of these lessons, also becoming a writer and really honing the craft of writing. I think that it's all tied to a thing that I feel very strongly about, which is I think that school does not do a good job of teaching people how to craft their work. And what I mean by that is school, when they ask you to write, when they ask you to create, they're asking you to hit a page count. And they're teaching you to just add words in for the sake of adding words in and hitting a page count. And I think a lot of people don't learn that is a good way to do well in school, to hit that page count. It is a bad way to communicate. And learning how to hone your message to make sure that whatever you're saying is important, it's on subject, it's funny, it's connecting things together. Everything should be serving a purpose, no matter what medium you're working in.
Yeah, everything should be serving a purpose. That's really, I think, the point of what he was trying to say. And then so when we were talking to Linda, and I don't know why this also struck me, it felt like such a revelation when she talked about looking at those different elements of any experience, a shopping experience. It doesn't have to be an escape room, doesn't have to be immersive theater, but even just going into your local grocery store, that's an experience. And then the way she put it, though, about thinking of it as different sliders, and this also came into my head when we talked about the nest. Is it an escape room or not? And you were like, well, it's got the puzzles dialed way down low, and it's got the storytelling way up high, and the set design is way up high. And so really thinking of it that way is, I don't know why, the visual image of a mixer, of blending the different elements together to get the exact mix of the vibe that you're going for, that really resonated with me. And then also something like her talking about the humanizing factor, which again, you don't think of it as a design element, but it absolutely is. Do you feel warm and welcome here? That will go a long way towards affecting the emotions of the guest.
Yeah, I really like the visualization of that. One of the things that I would probably add to it is the notion that some of these sliders have inverse relationships to one another, that when you push one up, another one falls down. Like the more premium you push a slider, the more your affordability slider starts to go in the other direction. There's a lot of complexity, and I think that making something great is often about figuring out where that right level of compromise is.
Hey REPOD listeners, this is Jake from Weldwood Marketing. Every great escape room needs smart strategy and clever execution. The same goes for your digital marketing. Whether you need a better website, stronger Google rankings, or ads that actually work, Weldwood Marketing has your back. Let's turn more searchers into players.
So, David, at this past live recon, there were a lot of sponsors. And I'll tell you, though, one of them really stood out to me, and that was Weldwood Marketing. And you know how they got my attention?
Oh, I know exactly how they got your attention because it's the way that they got my attention.
Weldwood Marketing had a big table with all kinds of cool marketing tchotchkes, pens, mugs, things like that. But Jake had made a special customized coaster with David Spira's gigantic face on it. And it was so funny. I saw it and I immediately started cracking up.
I saw it so many times before I made it to the show floor because people kept showing up and finding me and showing it to me. So I knew that Jake wanted my attention, and he got it.
Yes. I mean, honestly, when we were looking for another sponsor for this podcast, I thought of Jake and Weldwood Marketing immediately because the power of spectacle and how to be remembered, how to get people to remember you and your business. And just that one thing alone really convinced me that Jake and Weldwood Marketing understand what it takes.
And now I have invited a lot of people to troll me. Great.
All right, REPOD listeners, we love the escape room and immersive industry so much. We're doing something we almost never do at Weldwood Marketing. We're offering discounts. 15% off marketing services for your first 3 months and $750 off escape room websites. We wanted to make sure you have something special for being a fan of REPOD. Go to weldwoodmarketing.com/REPOD to schedule a discovery call with me, Jake, and let's take a full assessment of your online presence and find out ways that we can unlock some more money for you and your business.
Links and details in the show notes.
This next clip is from Season 6, Episode 10, when we had Lonnie Hansen, famed designer of all sorts of artistic installations.
You describe yourself as a maximalist. What does that mean to you?
The only formal education I have is magic school. I had an incredible magic teacher. And from the time I was 14 to 20, I went to magic school. And to perform magic or design magic, the magician uses everything in his power to create the illusion or the magic, right? You're using a bunch of stuff that the audience doesn't know about. And you don't want them to know about it. It's just the stuff that you use to move your audience to the right place for that moment of magic to happen. So in magic, you use a lot of different languages. You use everything in the room that you can, whether it's the lighting and the tone and the visuals and the color and the sound and the Foley. You're using everything you can to get to where you want to go. And that's what maximalism is to me. It's not just a bunch of stuff. A lot of people think it's just a preponderance of stuff. And it does use a lot of stuff.
You're not a hoarder. You're deliberately layering things.
Well, I am a hoarder. Let's not go that far.
The being a hoarder is not the maximalist thing.
Yeah, no, we hoard because we have to have an incredible palette to pull from. But because we have to pull from that palette. Obviously, I have not designed escape rooms, but I would imagine that the process is similar in that you are saying, what are the objects that support my story? What are the colors that support my story? What are the textures that support my story? What are icons that trigger a memory for people? What has good DNA?
Oh no, PG, he figured out why he's here.
The end of that clip is fun. This clip, it's funny. At the time, I don't think I would have expected this one to stick with me the way that it has, but I am professionally an experienced designer, and I've been doing it for well over 20 years at this point, because I started designing things as a teenager. I very much came up through the Steve Jobs era of minimalist design being king. And that is definitely where a lot of the modes of thinking that I draw from exist. And since talking to Lonnie, I have been trying to turn down the minimalism and maybe not go full maximalism, but I've been trying to do a little bit more. I've been trying to add a little bit of adornment and a little bit more to what I make. And I think that a lot of that is stemming from just seeing another creator do wonderful work with a different mode of thinking and seeing a lot of virtue in it, especially when you start thinking about in-person experiences.
I'm a more is more kind of gal.
No kidding.
So for me, he was preaching to the choir, and it really struck me when he was talking about, yeah, I am a hoarder, but it's because I need that palette to pull from. And so here, for instance, Chris Lukeman was talking at it from the lens of a filmmaker. Well, here Lonnie's talking about it from the lens of being an artist. So thinking about the textures and the colors that support the story, and just like an artist, they're using that to tell the story on a painting. And with set design, you're using those objects to paint the picture. This next clip is from my good friend, Tommy Honton, season 3, episode 7. And here he's talking about the player's journey. And this is one of the first times that topic really came across my consciousness.
Since Stash House is blurring that line between fiction and reality, what steps do you take to preserve the magic circle and ensure that the players know that the game is just a game and there aren't actually drugs here, the cops aren't actually coming? How do you keep them in that suspension of disbelief without it becoming unnerving?
I think, first of all, they know what they're getting themselves into. It's not like we grab them off the street and shove them in. They know they're opting in to come to play a game. We have a live person doing onboarding. The rules are clearly stated. We don't explicitly say this is a game, but it is very, very clear, and we've never had anyone not understand that. And then at the end, the curtain is more or less lifted when you succeed and you're brought into the back for the photo moment. So people know they're not really inducted into a gang. I like playing with those moments, though, of when the curtain can lift, having that sufficient victory time, and looking at sort of an adrenaline map. Because there's a lot of ways to look at how you design, and a lot of ours was very early on looking at adrenaline maps. So, for example, When someone is reading reviews and looking to book a ticket, that moment of booking a ticket is adrenaline going up because it means you've scheduled something. And then you have an ellipsis of time between when they book that ticket and then show up at your door. And so then they're driving to you, adrenaline's going up. But then they're looking for parking, and parking in a neighborhood sucks. So that is an adrenaline going down. And they're finally at the front of the door, and then they go to the bathroom. And that's so the idea of looking at these adrenaline moments, and then the game starts, adrenaline up, looking at your puzzles and where bottlenecks are, you really want one of your highest adrenaline moments to be the ending and to be the moment of victory. And then you kind of want to shove them out the door as fast as you can from the victory moment. You want to get the photo, answer any questions, do any sort of walkthroughs very quickly, because you want them to be outside buzzing with that adrenaline going, talking about how much fun they had and bonding as people. To me, a lot of the experience is really about how we onboard, offboard, and get people out feeling excited and wanting to do another game. Obviously, we don't have a second game, so we want them to still be excited. And we do talk about the games we love in the area, because the person most likely to book another game is someone that just played one and had fun. And so keeping that momentum going was always very important, and sort of looking at it from that lens.
Tommy's an adrenaline dealer. This is a very appropriate for you.
Although, and I used to use the analogy that, like, as an experienced designer, I am a drug dealer, because your primary drugs are dopamine and adrenaline. I said that at a talk, and a guy sent me a very nasty. I don't use social media, so I got a notification a few days after. He basically said that I was a monster for using that term, drug dealer, because he apparently was one and almost got arrested, and said I didn't know the experience. I didn't have the right to use that phrase. So I have since retired saying that, but it really is about knowing how to push adrenaline and dopamine in certain moments. Now, obviously, it can't just be jump scares. So the goal is, how do you use environmental storytelling to get that out? How to use narrative moments and beats and puzzles and solves? There's a lot of tools in your toolkit to get the same results, but you want to vary it up. And also, at the end, you want them to have a through line or a story. Otherwise, you're just making an obstacle course.
The idea of adrenaline mapping a player's journey just really struck me, because again, as a guest, you're not often thinking about, like, how are my emotions being manipulated by the designer at this point in time? And then when he started pointing out those moments of kind of the adrenaline spike, I recognized it immediately. You know, it was like somebody giving a name for something you recognize. And so when he brought up this concept of adrenaline mapping and how when you book the ticket, you get a little spike of excitement. And yeah, like, it's on the calendar, I'm going to go, you know, and then it dies down. The whole idea of that made so much sense to me. And now I think about it all the time. I think a lot of the other clips we've played have been about, like, what are some of the different canvases that you could paint on, and realizing that not only are these different canvases that you can design, but you also need to pay attention to the emotions that it's sparking in your guests, and that kind of ebb and flow of managing the emotions of the player on their journey.
Yeah, I think that designing anything, if you're doing it well, is an exercise in altruistic manipulation. You're trying to figure out how to get people to feel a particular way, or learn a certain thing, or accomplish something. Whatever it is, you're trying to create the optimal environment for that to work out.
Like with haunts, you're constantly just at a 10, almost the whole way through.
And that's why I think that, broadly speaking, I think a lot of haunts don't do a great job at what they are trying to do, because they're just scaring you. And in a lot of ways, the anticipation of it is more scary than what you end up experiencing. And so I think that having a lot more to pull from definitely gives you more of an edge.
Hey, escape room owners, are you looking to level up your marketing and operations? BuzzShot is an all-in-one solution for powering business growth and improving the customer experience. They offer a ton of pre- and post-game features, including waiver management, creating awesome branded team photos, and they can streamline review management for Yelp, TripAdvisor, Google reviews, Facebook reviews, wherever people review. They got you covered. And they also offer integrations with Cogs.
So much of what BuzzShot does is about streamlining your operations and making your customer experience work more smoothly. And one of the many things that BuzzShot does towards those goals is automating your Facebook integration and helping to automatically upload the photos that you've taken of your teams directly to Facebook and other social media apps. In addition to the fact that it all gets texted and emailed out to your customers. Doing all of this all at once with the push of a button saves so much time when you multiply that out times all of the different times that you have your staff taking those post-game photos.
Glenn Hensey from Clutopia had this to say about BuzzShot. Automatically uploading into Facebook folders saves so much time. It also helps us to get reviews and track which groups left them.
Streamline your marketing and grow your escape room business. REPOD listeners get an extended free trial and 20% off your first 3 months with no setup fees or hidden charges. Visit buzzshot.com/repod, that's REPOD, to learn more. Link and details in the show notes. So my next clip is probably going to tie all of this together. If I had to pick one episode of Reality Escape Pod that I think is the strongest representation of what we do here, it's Season 3, Episode 2, when we had Johanna Koljonen, famed Nordic LARP designer, on. The thesis of kind of all of her work is summed up in this clip.
This leads into my next question, which is, there's an underlying thesis to all of your work, near as I can tell, which is everything is a designable surface. And these 5 words pulled together so many things that I've long believed, but I couldn't quite articulate. Can you explain this concept?
Yeah. So when you're making experiences of any kind, and in particular, if you're designing for participation of some kind, you're going to want people to do some actions. And the things that are allowing or forbidding people from doing actions or encouraging them or hindering them from doing actions is basically, like, at its most fundamental level, it's the physical environment and it's the social environment. So in the physical environment, there are certain things you can do and you can't do, and certain things that are easier or feel more appropriate. For instance, if you want to have a party in your home, this is the example I always say, if you want people to dance, you might want one room that's like a little darker because it's less embarrassing to dance, right? And the music is loud enough so that you don't hear your body moving more than you hear the music. But you might also want maybe some like disco light type situation because it sets a mood, or a smoke machine. But you might also want people to talk at this party and to interact in that way. And then you're going to want another space where the music isn't quite as loud so that it's possible. And in that space, probably you're also going to want more light so that people can see each other's facial expressions. And the way most apartments in cities are set up, that part of the party is probably going to be in the kitchen, and that has to do with the physical distances. People in most kitchens will automatically end up at a conversation distance from each other, and there are also things that they can do while they're hanging out with their hands, which is great because people get nervous. And shy people who do things like help with dishes or peel fruit can suddenly talk to stranger. So now, you see, I started to talk about the physical environment and I immediately messed it up and started talking about the social environment because these are intimately connected. So it's easier to dance on a dance floor if all the lights aren't on. And it's easier to talk in a kitchen if some of the lights are on. And this is, like, at its most basic level, this is the thing. And when you start thinking about experiences in this way, you realize that literally everything that's happening in the physical space or in the social interactions in the social space are designable surfaces. All of this stuff is man-made, and all of these things can be adjusted in different ways. We talk a lot about alibis for interaction in my design practice. So anything that will give you permission to do something that you wouldn't normally do, like wearing a mask, gives people a sense of permission to be a little bit more free in their partying, for instance, or a little bit more free in their participation. Even at a party where everybody knows who everybody else is, wearing a mask has this effect. So that would be one way of using a physical item, in this case a physical alibi, a mask, to help design what is possible in the social space.
When I first met Johanna, my brain was just completely melted by her approach to design and the things that she had made.
Drinking from the fire hose is how somebody put it in the Patreon.
Yeah. And I dug into a lot of this in the episode, so I don't want to rehash too much of what's there, because if you haven't listened, you should listen. If you haven't listened recently, honestly, thing holds up. And that's Johanna. She is just incredible. I really do think that we all have all of these different surfaces that we can design on, and we are all constantly looking to get and give permission to other people to have fun or to do whatever it is they're going to do, whatever it is you want them to do. And I think that so much of what she imparted is just so valuable. I also think back on this episode very fondly because this was one of the first times that I really had to persuade PG that this guest and this topic was going to be a good idea. This was like my first really big swing.
Hit a home run, David. I mean, this entire episode could have literally just have been clips from her episode. Like every single clip, I kept going back to different things she said because I found all of it so impactful and just so well articulated. Even that clip, a lot of the things that she's saying are things that we instinctively know. I bet a lot of you at home are nodding along when she's like, you want to turn the lights down? If people want to talk, that's the kitchen. You're probably nodding your head going, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. What she's talking about is being deliberate in your design choices. So this next clip is from season 6, episode 3, our interview with Christine Barger.
You're competing as an escape room with other entertainment. You're not competing with other escape rooms. We have to compete with all of the pop-up museums, with all of the K-pop things, with the night markets, with the bowling alleys. I don't know if people still bowl, but you know what I mean. So we're competing against all of these other entertainment venues that allow you to have your birthday party and take pictures there. And then they get to an escape room and we're like, no pictures. Oh, how am I going to show my friends that they missed out on my birthday party? How am I going to make them jealous for not showing up to my birthday? I had a fun birthday and nobody's going to know about it. So of course we want photos. Ultimately, like, I love influencers. Come play our game and take all the pictures you want. And I've heard other companies say like, well, we just wish that they wouldn't, they always want to take pictures and we don't want that. And then they ask for in-game footage. Like, yeah, they do. Because they want to market you to a huge brand new audience that don't know about you.
That don't even know that they want to play escape rooms. And maybe now they do because this cool influencer came and had fun doing it.
The thing is, like, if you don't let them come, then they will go somewhere else.
You know, David, I almost forgot about this clip when we were choosing them because I didn't realize how fully ingrained this idea of, yeah, duh, escape rooms should be marketing their games by letting people take photos. And I've been saying this for so long that I almost forgot the first time I went to an escape room and a creator was like, take all the photos you want. Film a TikTok in there. You know, when I went to Christine's room at Exit Games OC and she said, film a TikTok dance in there. I don't care. Do it, you know? And this was an absolute revelation to me. This was the first time any escape room owner had opened up that invitation, not only to me and to us as reviewers, they opened this up to anybody who wanted to come play the game.
It was so unfamiliar at the time that we kind of misused the opportunity because we did not even have a mental construct for how to use that space. I would do so much more if I were to go back to play her game 13th Basement again. And I do think that there is also a certain amount of, you know, we talk about the average escape room booker being a woman between the age of 30 and 45. And I do worry that we aren't, as a community, attracting enough young folks. And some of that is because they don't know that this exists, or if they do, it has not been made cool because the types of people who are setting trends in younger communities, they're not playing escape rooms because they can't make content in them.
I mean, to me, this concept of letting your guests, and especially influencers, film videos and take photos in your room, it kills two birds with one stone. What's the number one thing that we hear from guests whenever they come on and they talk about marketing? We don't know how to do it. We're terrible at it. Guess what? There's people out there who are great at marketing. They're called influencers. That's what they do. And a lot of times all they want is just content. They want something really cool and exciting and different. And that's what escape rooms are. And they're different because no one's seen them before. They've been so secretive until now. And you put so much money into building these gorgeous rooms. Show them off. I mean, I know at this point I'm beating a dead horse, but when we had Christine Barger come on at this point in time, this was still very much a new concept. And I really like to think that since then, since that episode, since you've had her speaking at Recon, a lot more owners seem to have become more receptive to this idea.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I'll also say that, on the subject of marketing, we have a Patreon, and you really should consider supporting us on it. I have historically been very bad at trying to put myself and our Patreon out there because I am a little old school about this stuff. But the truth is that we put so much into it. We have all of these different shows, the Reality Escape Pod bonus show, the Spoilers Club, and so much other stuff happening in that Patreon. We are just hitting episode 100 on here, but we crossed episode 100 long ago on the bonus show. And I think we're about to hit 50 on the Spoilers Club. So there is so much content for you there. And the money that we make from that is the thing that propels everything we're doing forward. The stability that Patreon and our community have provided for us is something that I cannot imagine doing what we have done without it. We just wouldn't have been able to accomplish everything. And so I say thank you to all of our patrons. And I hope that if you are someone who has a little bit of money and likes what we're doing, take a look at what we're doing on Patreon. See if it has something for you.
Wow. David, my little marketing heart just grew 3 sizes.
Christine gave me permission.
And David has even learned to make reels on Instagram.
It's true. I've gotten real good at talking into the camera. So this next clip is from Alexander Gierholz back in season 4, episode 4. This was the season where we were interviewing a guest from a different country every single episode. And this one, I think, is probably a surprise for people. So enjoy it.
I mean, I had a bit of a moment where I was questioning a lot of the work that I was doing a few weeks ago when I was doing a training to become a nature guide. And we were in the wild in the south of Spain, tracking animals and interpreting nature. And it was fascinating. It was amazing. This was an experience that didn't need to be gamified for me because it felt really immersive. But the shocking moment was for me when I was in the woods collecting things. And I remembered playing a video game in which I was doing the same thing. And I thought oh, wow. So actually I'm doing the real thing now, but my memory, my association is the virtual activity that I had more often and I have much more memories and associations with. And this moment was for me so shocking because then I started to realize at the same time we're in an environment that is heavily threatened and with a lot of ecological problems. And I don't really connect with it as much because I go home and engage with my virtual environment, which is increasingly getting better. My video games are getting better. All these games that I'm playing and all these tools and gadgets that I have are continuously getting better and making me feel like there's a progression. But if I go actually in the real world out there in the wild, things are continuously going worse. And this was for me a moment where I was like, okay, there's something really deeply problematic here and steering me a bit away from the concept of escapism.
So this clip, when we had that conversation at the time, I was really thinking about escapism and that I do believe to my core, I believe people need to have fun. People need to have escapism. People need to be able to exit the life that they are in, that they are stuck with, their problems. And boy, especially back when we had this, as I was talking about, I was very ill. And some of the only times I didn't feel terrible was when I was entering flow state. And that was frequently when I was either writing, editing podcasts, or playing games. Those are the only times that I got anything that resembled a reprieve. And that stuff matters to me. And at the same time, I can't help but feel like there are times where escape rooms are this target that we are pointing very smart people at, and we're having them solve fake problems. And there are times where I stop and I think about that. And I do sometimes find myself wondering and thinking about, should we point our community at a real problem? Is that something that people would be interested in doing? Is it something that I've been increasingly thinking about?
I'm glad I don't get sucked into these philosophical quandaries the way you do, because I'm like a brain of a goldfish over here. Because I think about what David said all the time, but for me, it's like watching Only Murders in the Building. And it's me solving murder mysteries at home on a Friday night with my friends thinking, should we be out solving real crime?
No, you shouldn't.
No, and it's completely facetious, but it's like the flip side of you being burdened with the weight of it. But I do get what he's saying. When you had first brought up this clip and talked about how much it meant to you, I didn't really get it. It didn't really connect with me the same way that this conversation connected with you. But then I think about the time that I was at Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and I'm in this really sacred, ancient, historical place.
PJ, this is exactly the story you told right after this clip ended.
Oh, yeah. So I get it. And it was weird because all I could think of was this is just like Disneyland, just like Indiana Jones. And that was kind of a weird feeling. And so I do understand that weirdness of the fake world somehow feels more real than the real world. And maybe that is a problem.
Yeah, it's complicated. And I will never promise you that Reality Escape Pod will be all escapism. I'm someone who's just too tethered to the world, and I do think about this stuff a lot. Try not to overburden people with it. But I do think sometimes it'd be nice if we as a community figured out how to, like, I don't know, do a blood drive or something like that.
I think that we're bringing people together, and you have created a really warm and welcoming community and people that maybe had some emptiness or loneliness in their lives. Like I certainly did, and not in like a bad way, but it was like I didn't even realize I was missing the community until I found it, and I realized that I'd been living without it my whole life. I think that alone is definitely worthwhile. And if it's a group of like-minded people who are going to get together and experience fulfillment and joy and feel that connectedness, that's a human spirit thing right there. And I think that's just as important. And that's important work that you're doing with the tours. You're connecting all these people who want to play rooms and maybe they don't have other people to play with. And finding like-minded people is important work, David.
I know it. And believe me, I feel it. And I'm not saying instead of, I'm saying we have this great, wonderful, kind group of people. And there are times where I find myself wondering, is it possible? Is there interest in a small way channeling a little bit of our collective energy into something that is real for a moment?
I think that's the evolution. You know, they talk about once you've fulfilled certain requirements, are my physical needs met? Are my social needs met? And then once you've met certain requirements and milestones, you start to think bigger, right? Like, how can we make improvements upon the world? So I think that's good. I think that means that you're in a place where you feel like you have more time and generosity of spirit to devote to those things.
That's my hope.
This next clip is from Season 8, Episode 5, Jeroen van Hasselt.
It's actually how I start building games and how I start with anything. So I'm a game designer. I come from the video game industry. This is how I've been taught to design games. And this is also the lens I work through. But already in my game design studies, I was specializing really on the mechanics because I'm interested about interactivity. The thing to interact with what you're creating is the game mechanic. And already I felt, okay, if we start with this being unique or different, because I love doing new things, that's actually what excites me the most. So when building the Mice of the Greisers, for example, and I'm not sure if I should already delve into this immediately, but the first thing we started with is the vision. Okay, we need to have a mechanic that has to do something with trains. And we really did a lot of brainstorming on this, and we tried to think of trains on an abstract level. And to think about it in an abstract level means, like, what is a train? A train is a transport vehicle that brings something from A to B. But the unique thing about a train, unlike cars or boats or airplanes that are free to move around, a train is limited in its freedom because it's always attached to rails. And that was the trigger for us, like, hey, maybe we can do something with that. And maybe if we can let the players feel limited in their freedom as well, following tracks, that, served as the inspiration for the game.
So that was Jeroen talking about their game, Demise of the Greisers. And there's a really unique mechanic in that game where we as players are tethered to a cable that runs on a 2-dimensional plane, right? You can only go back and forth. And there's different mechanics to go from place to place, but it was really unique. It played like a video game, and it was a really fun mechanic. But it wasn't until we had him on the episode and he was talking about this that I was like, yes, that's exactly what it is. We're like trains moving back and forth. And I didn't even realize that was his inspiration, even though the game takes place in a giant train yard. But I don't know what it is about this concept. It just hit me like a thunderbolt. This is how you make a unique game mechanic, and you draw from the story. You draw inspiration from the narrative. And let me tell you, David, that it changed my life in a way, because I don't think I would be able to design the puzzles for PG's Playhouse, our new show. Plug our new show, PG's Playhouse. I make games and puzzles for this new podcast, and I wouldn't be able to make the puzzles for it if it wasn't for this clip. Because when we were coming up with the concept of the show, I was really insisting to David that we needed a topic. I was like, I need a topic for every episode to anchor the puzzle to. And I couldn't even really articulate why until I heard this clip. And really what Jeroen is talking about is taking the concept and breaking it down into like its fundamental concepts, right? And so I'll give you an example. When we had Anna Chris Lukeman come on and we were talking about mini golf. So mini golf is the theme of the show. And I had really a hard time trying to think of a fun puzzle for this. And so I was just thinking about mini golf, hole in one, thinking about different concepts associated with it. And I was like, a hole in one. I'm going to take a word and I'm going to put a hole in one. And so the game was, you have to define a word and then you're going to add an O into that word to make a new word, right? And that was really a game that was inspired by the fundamental concept of golf. And to me, that's elegant design. It's tied to the theme. It was fun. It worked on a wordplay level. And all thanks to Jeroen and this clip.
I think it's a great clip. And I also think that one of the things that I've always struggled with kind of a lot of escape rooms is that most escape room owners and designers think in terms of theme. I'm going to make this themed game. And then they go and they put puzzles that could be interchangeable. Doesn't matter what theme the game was.
A Sudoku is the classic example of why are we doing Sudoku in Egypt?
Yeah, I feel like Sudoku gets beat on a lot. It's not there as often as it used to be. But like they're putting a theme on the same puzzles, and they could put a different theme on the puzzle and move it into a different room. Whereas I think that, in my opinion, if you're working with theme really well, you're taking that theme and asking yourself, like, what mechanics are you going to produce because of the theme? Not how are you going to reskin the mechanics you were already going to use to match the theme.
Yeah, you're not just going through some motions. And it's like the fundamental concept of that theme is reinforced through the gameplay and constantly reinforced through many other elements of the game. Whenever I find myself stuck on a puzzle or something, I go back to that over and over. I just break it down into different aspects and different parts of it. And that's where a lot of inspiration comes from. And it'll always end up feeling connected to your theme if you're drawing from it in the first place.
This next clip is a very recent one. It's from season 9, episode 8. And it's from Ernest Clavinge, one of the creators of the Golden Idol games.
Mechanically, the rise of the Golden Idol is very similar to the case of the Golden Idol, with some notable improvements. So what did you choose to change for the sequel?
Not everybody thinks it's improvements. There are different opinions. But yeah, there's sayings that people take two things. Nothing changes and that everything changes.
The shortest clip in the history of the podcast.
One of us had to actually pick a clip that wasn't long. This clip I picked really while I was editing the episode because this kind of ties back to where I am in terms of like running Room Escape Artist as a business, and learning the way that people react to change and difference has been a wild ride. And seeing the way that people get upset with you if you change nothing and they get upset with you if you change something, it was so true. And he wrapped that up so succinctly and so bluntly. This really hit home.
This clip really came out of left field, but I get it. Like, you can't please everybody.
Yeah, it's not just about pleasing people. It's just that people react really strangely to change. I'm dealing with it right now in a whole bunch of different ways, and people have a hard time with change. People on your team, people who you collaborate with, and your audience. Just when you change things up, there's always some backlash, even when it comes with a lot of people who are happy.
That's true. I think I'm probably one of those people that's been like the most flexible.
You're very flexible. You're very easy to work with. In fact, I'm always leaning on structure, mostly because it helps us from a production standpoint. But I know you would probably be more willing than I am to break out of structure more readily.
Yes and no. I do think that there's been times when you wanted to do away with certain things. And I'm like, David, the audience has come to expect this. There's some things that the stability is what makes people feel comfortable, right? That's why things like ritual are so important to a lot of people. There's a comfort in that, but change is how we grow. Challenging yourselves is how you produce growth in your own lives. And people get unsettled by that, though. The change and growth is difficult.
So, PG, what's your last clip?
There is a beautiful symmetry in the clips that we chose, because I, too, have chosen a clip from Elan Lee, our season 1, episode 1 guest.
There's an underlying thread behind everything I've ever designed. Every design I've ever been passionate about, every game I've ever enjoyed playing, every game I've ever enjoyed building. The underlying thread is none of those games are entertaining. All of those games are just tool sets to make the players entertaining.
Ah, you could pick a short one too.
Yes, this is something that, again, also it struck me so hard. And this is probably something that I have repeated so often throughout the course of this podcast.
This is by far your most quoted lesson from this show over the course of REPOD. I think it has probably come up more times than anything else individually. This had to be one of your clips.
Yes. Well, it's one of those things that until he said it, I didn't realize that's what was the driving factor behind a lot of my favorite activities. These are all things that make the players entertaining. This is why I don't really like to watch movies or TV shows that much. I'm not a huge fan of going to watch theater, but I'm a huge fan of escape rooms because I get to be the hero. I get to be the one doing and saying the interesting things. And I think about this all the time. This is why I love party games. A lot of party games and a lot of the games that Elan makes are games where you are being given tools and an opportunity to be funny and to create funny interactions between you and the people around you. And those to me are like some of the most memorable moments of my life. These are moments that create opportunities for you to have private jokes with your friends. These are all the little threads that connect you to your friends and family and just make life better.
I agree. And yeah, I would not have framed up Elan's games or some of the games that I love that way until he expressed those thoughts. And that framing is perfect. And I think it's very much a useful way of thinking about game design. It's definitely something I learned from as well.
Yeah, so that's been our journey through 9 seasons of REPOD.
9 seasons, 100 episodes. It's wild.
9 seasons in a movie. To be honest, there were so many more clips that we could have put in this. We're going to probably continue talking about some of our other favorite moments in the bonus episode, but we had to choose our darlings, and these were probably the ones that have been repeated the most or really just changed us fundamentally in a lot of ways.
Yeah, this was not like a picking favorite so much as I tried to at least pick quotes that I felt compelled by, moments of the show that I could not get out of my head. In some ways, making the first pass list of the quotes we could have pulled from was a lot of work. But in retrospect, I probably could have just picked, 5 to 7 of them very quickly and not gone through so much of the process that I had gone through to get to the ones that I got.
I will say also that I feel like I have learned so much in the course of producing this podcast, and it wasn't until I looked back at literally the very first experience that I really took ownership over for Neotropolis. And it was so well received. And I have to say, it's because I learned so many lessons from all of these guests that we've had on. These are the greats, these are people that have created the best experiences in the world. And it's not like they did it on accident. They were very deliberate in their design choices. And that's how they created these wonderful, fun, emotional experiences. And they came on and shared all of their knowledge with us. And I am so grateful for all of the guests that have been so incredibly generous with their time and with their knowledge. There wasn't any gatekeeping. These people came on and spilled their beans. They gave us all of their secret tricks to how to make a great experience. And it's all there, free for the listening.
These guests and so many more. And PG, now I'm going to blindside you a little bit. I didn't show up with this planned. This is something that came to me over the course of hearing the clips you have chosen and hearing the reasons you chose them. In the early days, you came on as this voice of the audience, this very entertaining, very thoughtful person, but also the outsider, the person who didn't know all the jargon, didn't know all of the terms, didn't know a lot of what we were talking about. And we were worried. I was worried for a long time. I knew you were going to level up. I knew that one day the role that you were fulfilling was going to have to change because you were no longer going to be the outsider. And listening to you now and knowing what you have been doing and accomplishing at Neotropolis and with PG's Playhouse, you're a game designer now. And you're bringing a different perspective. And it's great. It's different than the perspective you had because 100 episodes has changed you. And it's incredible seeing what you have become.
Oh, thanks, David. I appreciate that. Don't worry, I still remember to ask all of the same questions, all the same clarifying questions.
You're still good at it. I think I have gotten better at building up to those questions. I think I've changed the way I write my script to make those questions a little less needed and allowing you to be a little bit more of you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we can talk about some of the changes and some of the ways the podcast has grown in the bonus episode. But the way you craft the shows, we talked about the player journey, but there is definitely a listener journey that David takes you on whenever he crafts all of the episodes. And there's so many times when, to me, it's felt like a magic trick because the guest automatically starts talking about a topic. And I'm like, this is literally the next question on David's list. Like, how did he do that? He's a witch. Burn him.
Thank you, Paige. It has been a pleasure making 100 episodes with you. I look forward to 100 more and more past it and more shows. PG's Playhouse, the bonus show, the Spoilers Club. I'm sure there'll be some other show in our future as well. I love making podcasts with you. I couldn't have asked for a better podcast partner. And that was a stroke of luck in some ways because we barely knew each other when we started doing this.
Oh, David, trying his best to make me cry. That's usually my job.
I know. I'm working on it.
I can't express to you how much this has meant to me and how important this has become in my life. So I definitely am so grateful for the opportunity. Here we were saying we weren't, David started off when we were planning this. David said, I don't want this to be a whole thing where we sit around, congratulate each other. But here we are getting all sentimental. We can't help it. But this has truly been a great honor. I am so honored that we've been amassing more and more listeners. That has actually really meant the most to us, that designers are listening. Some of the best designers in the world listen to the podcast, and they tell us how much it has really affected their thought process and how they think about design. And that's really meant a lot. David, on your website, you talk about being, wry cheerleaders for the escape room industry. But I think less of a cheerleader and almost more of a coach, I would say. I think a lot of people really look up to what you're doing in the space, and they pay attention to what you say. And that's why it means so much to be working on this with you. But also, I know that you have the best interest of the community at heart, too. You're very, careful with your power.
difficult.
No, but you truly care. That's really what it is. Anyhow, I thank you, listeners, for being here and supporting us. This podcast would not exist without all of you.
It would not. And before I sign off, I'll just say thank you all for listening, especially those of you who have listened to all 100 episodes, people who are backing us on Patreon, people who have shared an episode with anybody or left a 5-star review for us. These things help us more than you can imagine. And like, seriously, sharing an episode with somebody goes so far. If you only ever do one thing for us, share an episode with someone you think would love it, because that is the best way to help us grow, and growing is the thing that we are trying to do. This episode of Reality Escape Pod is produced by Teresa Piazza with support by Lisa Spira. We're edited by Steve Ewing of Stand Inside Media, music by Ryan Elder, logo by Janine Proct, and all of this is brought to you by RoomEscapeArtist.com, your home for well-researched, rational, and reasonably humorous escape room and immersive gaming content and events. Boy, am I aware that everyone out there is competing for your Patreon dollars these days. And I gotta tell you, we benefit so much from our Patreon community, from the financial support and the moral support that they provide. We have grown so much over the last few years. And by grow, I really mean we've built a lot of infrastructure to make all of Room Escape Artist work so much better. And that is only possible because of our Patreon community. That is the bedrock that everything we're doing is built upon. And we are so deeply thankful to every single person who has joined. And if you have the money and you're able to, we will be so appreciative if you can put your support behind us.
And if you're loving our content, we do have more. We have the bonus after show where we continue the conversation with our guests, and it is a whole lot of fun. And if you want recaps, walkthroughs of specific escape rooms, we've got the Spoilers Club. That is one of my favorite shows to record because I get to really dig deep into these escape rooms, talk about how they're made, and just generally gush about what I loved about these wonderful experiences. Check out patreon.com/roomescapeartist for more details on our additional shows.
And a very big thank you to our highest level Patreon backers: Derek Tam, Breakout Games, Escaparium, Pat Tupin from Olivier Escape, Panic Room, Chris Laughlin, Rex Miller, Mark from Keystone Escape Games, Byron Delmonico, Karen, Kieran from Mystery Unfolds, and Andy Mincer. We truly appreciate your ongoing support. And finally, as we come around to this story at the end of the episode, if you have gotten this far and you have not yet left a 5-star review for us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please go do so. It does so much to help signal to other people and to the algorithms that this show is worth listening to. One of the weird problems that we keep running into as podcast hosts, especially given the number of episodes that we have recorded and also factoring in all the bonus shows, is that PG and I, we don't know what we've said. We don't know what stories we've told you. We don't know what anecdotes we have used. We don't know which ones we've used multiple times, because it's not just all of the shows, it's also all the tours. I have been constantly saying the same things over and over again for more than a decade. I have no freaking clue who I have told what or where. And sometimes I try and figure out which ones I'm going to stop myself and stop PG from going and retelling. And sometimes I just have to say, you know what? I'm giving us both permission to just keep saying that same thing over and over again until I'm confident that I'm sick of it.
Yeah, I'm queen of rehashing the same stories, and I laugh at them every single time. This is the beauty, David, of having a brain like a goldfish. It's brand new to me every time.
I know. Did you know that one time PG went into an escape room that had pager code and she didn't need the key because she just knew it?
Did you know that David went on a Ford escape room with people who had already played the game like 10 times?